In the world of the super-rich, wealth can build walls, separating those with everything from those with nothing. Julian Croft was a man who lived at the very top, a billionaire known for his ruthless efficiency. His life was a perfectly scheduled whirlwind of meetings and takeovers that had built him an empire. But on one cold Tuesday afternoon, the world he'd so carefully constructed was about to be shattered by a sight he could never have imagined. A billionaire is left in shock when he finds his elderly mother, who had just fallen, being cared for by a homeless teenager. As he rushes to her side, he's about to uncover a hidden truth that connects his mother to this boy in a way he never could have imagined. What he learns next wouldn't just change his life, but redefine the very meaning of wealth, kindness, and family. The call came at 3:14 p.m. Julian was in the middle of a hostile takeover, his voice a low, commanding weapon. Suddenly, his assistant, Clara, interrupted him, something she was strictly forbidden to do. "Mr. Croft," she stammered, her voice thin with panic. "It's security from your mother's residence. There's been an incident." Julian's blood ran cold. He cut the call, his mind racing through worst-case scenarios. 20 minutes later, his black sedan sliced through traffic. The driver pulled to a sharp halt a block from his mother's luxurious apartment building. And that's when he saw it. An image so out of place, it felt like a glitch in reality. His mother, Eleanor Croft, a woman of impeccable grace, was sitting on the dirty pavement, her elegant coat disheveled. And leaning against her, holding her frail hand, was a boy. He couldn't have been older than 17, with a thin, worn-out jacket that was no match for the city's cruel chill. His face was smudged with dirt, his hair a tangled mess. He was, without a doubt, homeless. A wave of pure, unfiltered rage washed over Julian. He threw the car door open and stormed toward them, his mind screaming. Who was this boy? What did he want? He was about to rip this grimy kid away from his mother, call the police, and unleash his full power. But as he got closer, he saw his mother's face. She wasn't scared. She wasn't in distress. She was looking at the boy with an expression of profound tenderness. And the boy was looking back at her, not with greed, but with genuine, desperate concern. The scene stopped Julian dead in his tracks. The billionaire was shocked, shaken, and utterly confused. He was about to learn a truth that would unravel everything he thought he knew. Hours before that polished black sedan screeched to a halt, Leo was just trying to survive another day. At 17, the city was both his home and his enemy. His entire world was in a threadbare backpack, a faded photo of his mom, a half-empty water bottle, and a small, worn book she'd given him. He'd been on the streets for nearly a year, a ghost in the bustling city, invisible to the thousands of people who rushed past him. His morning started before sunrise, as always, in a damp space behind a bakery. The smell of fresh bread was a sweet kind of torture. The baker, a gruff man with kind eyes, sometimes left a day-old loaf on the dumpster for him, a silent act of charity Leo never took for granted. Today it was 2 hardened croissants. He ate one slowly, saving the other for later. Hunger was a constant, dull ache he'd learned to live with. Leo's life wasn't always this way. He remembered a small, sunny apartment filled with his mom's cooking and her laughter. She was a nurse who worked long hours but always had a smile for him. They didn't have much, but they had each other. And she had given him something more valuable than any fortune, her philosophy on life. He could still hear her voice. They had been volunteering at a soup kitchen, and a man had been rude to her. Leo, then a fiery 16-year-old, was ready to fight. But his mom simply smiled at the man and offered him extra bread. Later, she sat him down. "Leo," she'd said, her hand on his cheek, "money comes and goes, but the person you choose to be, that's forever. The world won't always be kind, but you have to promise me you'll stay kind, even when the world isn't kind back." A month later, a sudden illness took her. The world did indeed become unkind. With no other family, Leo was lost in the system. Her small savings ran out, and an eviction notice appeared. He tried to find work, but without an ID or social security number, lost in the chaos after her death, he could only get under-the-table gigs for a few dollars. It was never enough. Soon his last $174 was gone, and the streets became his home. He learned the city's rhythms, where to find shelter from the rain, how to wash his face in a park fountain without being hassled. He learned to make himself invisible, but he never forgot his mother's promise. He'd return dropped wallets and sometimes share the small rewards with an elderly homeless woman with a rattling cough. He'd give his leftovers to stray cats, his heart aching with a loneliness as sharp as the winter wind. On this particular afternoon, Leo huddled in an alley, trying to escape the wind. He'd failed to find work, his stomach was a tight knot, and the cold was seeping into his bones. He pulled his thin jacket tighter and thought of his mother. "Promise me you'll stay kind," her voice echoed. It was a comfort and a burden. It's hard to be kind when your world is full of hardship. He was tired, so deeply tired of the struggle. He closed his eyes, just for a moment, letting the indifferent sounds of the city wash over him. He didn't know it yet, but in a few moments he was about to face a choice that would test his mother's final wish in the most profound way. A sharp cry cut through the city's dull roar, followed by a soft thud. Leo's eyes snapped open. He peeked out of the alley. A few yards away, an elderly woman lay on the sidewalk. People just walked past. Some glanced over, but most didn't even break their stride, lost in their own worlds of headphones and phone calls. Leo's heart gave a painful lurch. The woman was trying to get up, her movements frail. She was elegantly dressed in a long cashmere coat, the kind of clothing Leo only saw in shop windows. But her silver hair was a mess, and one of her fine leather shoes had come off. She looked lost and fragile. An instinct, inherited from his mother, screamed at him to help. But another voice, the voice of survival, whispered back, "Don't get involved. They'll think you pushed her, they'll see your clothes and blame you. Just stay hidden." It was the voice that had kept him safe on the streets. He watched for another moment, torn between his conscience and his fear. A man in a sharp suit sidestepped her without a second glance. A group of young women laughed as they hurried by, eyes glued to their phones. No one was stopping. The woman pushed herself onto her elbows, her face pale. "Home," she murmured, her voice a fragile whisper. I can't remember. Where is home?" That was it. Her whisper shattered Leo's fear. He saw his own mother in her eyes, in that same vulnerable look she'd had in her final days. He saw a human being who was scared and alone. And in that instant his mother's promise became a clear command. Stay kind, even when the world isn't kind back. Leo took a deep breath and stepped out of the alley. He walked slowly toward the woman, his hands held up so as not to frighten her. "Ma'am," he said softly, "are you all right?" She flinched, fear flickering in her eyes as she saw him. He knelt beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "You fell," he said gently. "Let me help you." He carefully picked up her expensive shoe, which felt alien in his rough hands. He gently took her foot, already red from the cold, and slid the shoe back on. His touch was surprisingly gentle. "Can I help you sit up?" The woman, Eleanor Croft, truly looked at him for the first time. The fear in her eyes was fading, replaced by a glimmer of trust. She saw the genuine concern in his young, tired face. She saw the kindness that shone through the grime. She gave a small nod. Leo shuffled closer. "Okay," he said in a low, soothing voice. "I'm going to put my arm around your back." He gently helped her into a sitting position against the cold brick wall. Then he did something else. He took off his own thin, worn-out jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was a small gesture against the biting wind, but it was all he had. Thank you," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. You're very kind." "It's okay," Leo said, sitting on the pavement beside her. He noticed her hand was shaking and reached out to hold it. "My name is Leo. What's yours?" "Eleanor," she said, a little stronger now. I think I hit my head. Everything is foggy." "That's okay, Eleanor," Leo said calmly. "We're just going to sit here for a minute. Everything is going to be all right." He had no idea how wrong he was, because at that exact moment, a sleek black sedan was pulling up, and a man with a face like a thundercloud was getting out. A man who saw not an act of kindness, but a threat. Julian Croft moved like a predator closing in. His world was one of order, and the sight of his mother on a dirty sidewalk, in the grasp of a street kid, was a violation of that order. "Get away from her!" Julian's voice cracked like a whip. Startled, Leo looked up at the tall, imposing man in a suit that cost more than he'd seen in his entire life. The man's eyes blazed with fury. Leo immediately let go of Eleanor's hand and started to scramble back, ready to run. This was exactly what he'd been afraid of. In this picture, he was the villain. But before Leo could get up, Eleanor's hand shot out and gripped his arm. Her hold was surprisingly strong. "No," she said, her voice clear and firm. "He's with me." Julian stopped, his jaw tight. "Mother, what are you talking about? Do you know this person? He could be dangerous. He could have robbed you." He glared down at Leo with pure contempt. "His name is Leo," Eleanor said sharply. "And he did not rob me. He helped me. I fell, Julian. I hit my head. And this young man was the only person who stopped. The only one." She looked around at the stream of indifferent people, then back at her son. Her eyes held a silent accusation. Julian's anger gave way to confusion. He knelt, his expensive suit creasing on the filthy pavement. "Mother, are you hurt? We need to get you to a hospital." He reached for her, but she pulled away slightly, keeping her hand on Leo's arm. "I'm all right, Julian. Just a little dizzy," she said. Then she looked at Leo, her expression softening. "He gave me his jacket." Julian finally noticed the thin, tattered jacket draped over his mother's cashmere coat. The gesture was so absurd it should have been laughable. A homeless boy's jacket on Eleanor Croft. But the simple, selfless kindness of it struck a strange chord in Julian's cold world. He looked from the jacket to the boy. Leo was shivering, his arms wrapped around himself. He was just a kid. A cold, hungry kid. "Thank you," Julian said, the words feeling stiff and unfamiliar. He pulled out his wallet and extracted several $100 bills. "Here, for your trouble." Leo stared at the money, then up at Julian. He saw the dismissal in the billionaire's eyes, a quick payment to make an uncomfortable problem disappear. It felt like an insult. He shook his head. "No, thank you, sir," Leo said, his voice quiet but steady. "I didn't help for money." Julian was taken aback. In his experience, everyone had a price. The boy's refusal was both confusing and, surprisingly, intriguing. "Take it," Julian insisted, his tone softening a little. "You're cold. Go buy yourself a proper coat." "He doesn't want your money, Julian," Eleanor said, her voice firm. "He helped me when you weren't here. When your security wasn't here, he was here." The weight of her words hit Julian. He had a multi-million-dollar security system for his mother, yet she had fallen, and a homeless boy had been her only protector. A profound sense of failure washed over him. He put the money away, a flush of shame creeping up his neck. "All right," he said, turning back to his mother. "Let's get you home. And you," he said, looking at Leo, "you're coming with us." Leo's eyes widened. "No, sir, that's okay. I should go." He tried to pull his arm away, but Eleanor held on. "Nonsense," Eleanor said. "You need to warm up. And I need to thank you properly. Julian will give you a ride." She looked at her son, her gaze unwavering. It was not a request. Julian sighed. He had a merger to finalize, but he couldn't deny his mother. And if he was honest, a seed of curiosity had been planted. Who was this boy, who had refused a handful of cash but had given away his only jacket? "All right," Julian said, resigned. He helped his mother to her feet. Then he looked at Leo, who was still shivering on the ground. For the first time, Julian saw him not as a nuisance, but as a person. "Get in the car, son. Let's get out of the cold." Leo hesitated, but the woman, Eleanor, was still holding his arm, a small, warm anchor in his cold world. He slowly nodded and followed them to the car. The door closed with a heavy thud, sealing him inside a bubble of warm leather and quiet luxury. As the car pulled away, Leo felt like he wasn't just getting a ride. He was being pulled into a story that was far from over,